Dallas, 2019. A man named Marcus is eating lunch in a shopping mall food court when he hears two loud sounds he cannot immediately identify. He looks around. Other people look around. For approximately 4 seconds, nobody moves, including Marcus. He describes that 4-second window as the most dangerous moment of his life, not because of what the shooter was doing, but because of what every single person in that space was not doing. They were not running. They were not hiding. They were waiting for certainty they never had. Marcus got out. 11 people in that mall did not. I'm Asha. This is Safety Nest. Most people have sat through some version of active shooter training. Most of that training is wrong. Here is what you actually need to know. The most common active shooter training in American workplaces and schools is built around a framework called run, hide, fight. In that order, as a hierarchy. Run if you can. Hide if you cannot run. Fight only as a last resort. This framework is not wrong, but the way it is taught almost always is. Most training presents these three options as a sequential decision tree, as if you will have the time and the information to evaluate them calmly before acting. You will not. The research on active shooter incidents consistently shows that the average time between first shot and the end of the incident is under 3 minutes. The average law enforcement response time is over 4 minutes. There is no sequential decision tree in 3 minutes. There is only the decision you have already made before the moment arrives. A 2014 FBI study of 160 active shooter incidents in the United States found that in 21 of those incidents, unarmed civilians successfully stopped the attack by physically confronting the shooter. In 13 incidents, civilians stopped the attack by restraining the shooter. The study also found that in the majority of incidents that ended before police arrived, it was civilian action, not police response, that stopped the shooting. The implication is clear and almost never taught in corporate or school training programs. Waiting for law enforcement to resolve the situation is not a survival strategy. It is a hope. The people who survived in the highest numbers were the people who moved immediately, decisively, and without waiting for certainty. Here are the 4 things that active shooter survival research consistently identifies as critical, and that standard training almost never covers. First, the sound of gunfire in an enclosed space sounds almost nothing like what you have heard in movies or on television. It is louder, more disorienting, and harder to locate. Most people who survive report that their first response to the sound was to assume it was something else. A car backfire, a shelf falling, a construction noise. This misidentification costs seconds. The rule: any loud, sharp, repetitive sound in a public space should trigger immediate movement, not investigation. Move first. Identify later. Second, most people freeze for 3 to 7 seconds after the threat registers. We have covered the freeze response extensively on this channel. In an active shooter scenario, those seconds are everything. The preload that breaks the freeze is not a self-defense technique. It is a single, pre-made decision. Before you walk into any large public space, a mall, a concert, an office building, a school, you make one decision. If I hear something wrong, I move toward the nearest exit immediately without waiting to confirm what is happening. That decision, made in advance, cuts the freeze window from 7 seconds to under 2. You are not reacting to the event. You are executing a plan you already had. Third, exit identification is not optional, and most people do not do it. When you enter any large public space, you have approximately 30 seconds before you stop naturally scanning. In those 30 seconds, you should identify 2 things: the exit you came in through and the nearest alternative exit that is not the main entrance. The main entrance is where the majority of people will go in an evacuation, which means it is the most congested, slowest, and in some scenarios, the most dangerous exit. The alternative exit is almost always faster: a fire exit, a service door, a side entrance. Find it when you arrive. You will not find it when you need it. Fourth, the decision to fight is not a last resort. It is a pre-made commitment that you either have or do not have before the moment arrives. Standard training tells people to fight only when there is no other option. When you are cornered, when running is impossible, when hiding has failed. By that point, the situation has already deteriorated to its worst state. The research on incidents where unarmed civilians successfully stopped an active shooter shows one common factor: they did not wait for the worst case. They moved toward the threat during a reload, a malfunction, or a moment of distraction. They acted during a window that lasted seconds, not minutes. The decision to take that window cannot be made for the first time in the moment. It must be made in advance. Here is the plan that covers all four. When you enter any large public space, identify the exit you came through and one alternative exit within 30 seconds of arriving. Make one preloaded decision. If I hear anything that could be a threat, I move toward the alternative exit immediately without waiting. If movement is impossible, get low, get behind solid cover, not concealment, cover, and silence your phone completely. If cover is unavailable and the threat enters your space, act. Use anything available. Move toward the threat during any pause. Commit completely. These three decisions, move, cover, act, made in advance, reduce the freeze window, increase your survival probability, and require no physical training to implement. They require only that you have made them before you need them. Marcus told me later that he thinks about those 4 seconds constantly. 4 seconds where he knew something was wrong, where his body had already registered the threat, and where his brain had no pre-made answer ready. He got out. He has spent the years since making sure he will never have those 4 seconds again. You just did the same thing. Share this video with one person who works in a school, an office, or any large public space. This information should not be a secret. Drop in the comments. Did your workplace training cover any of the 4 things I mentioned? I genuinely want to know. Subscribe to Safety Nest. Stay aware. Stay safe.